married and went to work for her husband, where she worked as a legal assistant for 35 years in Oklahoma. She passed away suddenly, and her 3 children were debating where she should come to live. And one's in Texas, one's in Colorado, and one's with the, well, it's not the Secret Service, but the Foreign Service. And they're out of town all the time, so she's been living in their house in Williamsburg for 11 years, and just got an invitation to go to Austria to spend some time with them over there. She has three children and 3 grandchildren. I get to work with Carol, and the less I see her, the better I know I'm doing, because she's the Ombudsman for long-term care. So when there's a complaint filed, Carol comes out to investigate. So please welcome Carol.
Thank you, Neil. I am indeed the long-term care ombudsman on the peninsula only. The ombudsman program is mandated by the federal government back in 1965 with the Older Americans Act. And as a result of that, every state in the union must have a long-term care ombudsman. And we have one in Richmond, but she can't be everywhere. So agencies on aging throughout the state of Virginia hire local ombudsmen. So when there's an issue in a facility, or a resident has a problem, or a family has a problem with long-term care, they contact us. If they're not sure where the ombudsman is or who it is, because it's kind of hard to get your name and information out there to everybody who needs to know about it, the health department many times is called, the state ombudsman is called, or any state office would be able to direct you to a person like me out in a facility. And we each handle our own facility. I don't go any farther than Hampton and Newport News. I don't go down to the south side. I do York County, Poquoson, James City County, and Williamsburg with Newport News and Hampton. So it's a very large area that I cover. Many facilities, closing in on 70. So there are lots and lots of residents to see about. An ombudsman is an advocate. My job is to be an advocate for all the residents in long-term care on the peninsula. And so when our biggest job actually is complaint handling. And when a family or a resident, or sometimes even facilities, have complaints, that sounds kind of like, kind of a strange thing to say, but many times facilities have a problem with a resident, particularly with their family. When families get crossways with a facility, nobody wins. And so as part of the training of an ombudsman, we get mediation training a lot. We have mandatory training on a regular annual basis, but that's a big part of our training because it's becoming more and more difficult to deal with families as they are becoming more and more concerned about what's going into facilities, which is a good thing. Things that are going on, and everybody should be concerned about it, particularly those who have a resident in there. That they're becoming more and more involved in it because they see all sorts of things on the internet. It is very easy to look up, wow, mom or dad's taking this drug, and there's a whole list of things that can go wrong. They're going wrong, and the facility's not paying any attention to that. Well, those are the times that families will get upset. An ombudsman's job is to try to empower the family to deal with it themselves. Big part of our job is education of families, residents, and then conferring with facilities to kind of come to a meeting of the minds when it seems like they're all working against that resident if they're all at odds. So if a facility can get the family to work with them and vice versa, then the resident is better off. Many times residents, particularly those who are quite ill in a nursing facility, get extremely upset when their family gets upset. They can tell. You don't have to simply go up and tell them, I am so mad at this facility that I am going to do this. Now, a resident can tell that a family is upset with the facility. They worry about that. They worry they're going to be out in the parking lot. They worry about that they're not going to get good care, that they're going to be retaliated against. All of this type of thing eventually ends up on my desk, where you try to get the facility, the family, and the resident all together at one table, eyeball each other, see what's going on here. Lots of times, and I don't mean to be picking on families, but once in a while a family will tend to come in with lots of baggage about how are we going to take care of mom or dad. They will continue to hold grudges about things that happened many, many years ago. Well, you'd be surprised, they made me take out that garbage for 15 years. That type of thing. And that can worry a resident that their family is not listening to them. If a family can just kind of forget about some of those past things, or even the problems that they have within their own family. Sometimes the children get at odds, and you know how that is. Your children, as you grow up, you and your sisters and brothers don't always meet eye to eye on everything. When it comes to mom and dad or aunt or uncle, that's when they start to differ on how we should do this. Or sometimes families will feel a great deal of guilt about a resident having to be in long-term care, and that shouldn't even have to be, because many people have to be in long-term care. The Ombudsman program has taken kind of a turn in the way we handle things anymore, in that we're going out into the community. I receive many complaints from senior living facilities that are not long-term care or assisted living or whatever. And we can deal with those now. We can help mediate. We can help go to the manager if they don't dare go to the manager, that type of thing. So we take into account an awful lot of different parts of a resident's life. They don't have to be in a nursing facility necessarily. They have to be in an assisted living. We do also receive complaints from hospice. Very, very few. Hospice is the one agency that we get very, very few complaints. And if we do, it's about somebody just maybe complaining about a facility, because hospice goes into facilities anymore. I don't know if all of you are aware of that. But when a resident becomes so ill in a facility, family and facilities feel it's really better for them just to stay there if they can have hospice care right there without having the trauma of having to move to a hospice house or go to a hospital where, it's very, very difficult for family. We also oversee home care. Home care, as you all know, has just really gotten huge all over the United States. More and more people are opting to stay home as long as they can. That's the best thing. Everybody feels better in their own home. Everybody does better, medically, psychologically, in their own home. And Ombudsman also works very closely with Adult Protective Services, if you're familiar with them. We are called many times by them, and we go along and investigate complaints together. And the Ombudsman program is confidential. The only people that an ombudsman can share information about a resident with is with the state ombudsman and the health department. We have a confidential internet in which we can do our reporting, and that's how our state ombudsman is able to pick up on what's going on with her in her state, and she can in turn go to the legislators and try to convince them, well, we need this, we need that, we need whatever in long-term care. Also, they kind of keep an eye on what's going on for the purposes of Medicare and Medicaid. services. Those go, any complaints they get about Medicare and Medicaid services go directly to those agencies themselves, and many times we deal with those. We do, whenever a resident or a resident's family has a complaint in a facility that has gone beyond our ability to help them with it, that sometimes the family will feel, we're gonna go and get a lawyer. We hear that quite a bit. And just as soon as they let us know that they have gotten legal assistance, an ombudsman will back off and just let them handle it, because too many voices coming in to where somebody's trying to get something done doesn't get anything accomplished. So we kind of step back, and that's about the only time when we do that. Otherwise, we do go in both feet and try to solve these problems. I was trying to think if there was anything else that, our major complaint, I guess, would be like abuse and neglect. And sometimes people do not understand the real meaning of abuse and neglect because they say, oh, mother's being abused and she's being neglected. The word willful is extremely important when you talk about abuse and neglect. That word has to be in there. If somebody neglects somebody willfully, for example, someone in a nursing facility setting or an assisted living facility setting completely ignores a resident asking for help, that's willful. They are not supposed to do that. No matter how many times that resident has complained or called on their call bell or whatever, you need to check that out, because you never know when it might be really a bad complaint. Somebody really needs help. Of course they go down there 13, 14 times a day to that same room. It's very, very so tempting to ignore that call bell when that same person calls again, but you can't do that. Abuse has to be willful as well, and it can be a mark on a body, but the kind of abuse that we get the most complaints about are subtle. They are expressions on a caretaker's face or a family's face, somebody going out of the room in kind of a huff after they've spoken to the resident, kind of or rolling their eyes like this or whatever when a resident asks for something. This can go a long way in making a resident feel extremely bad. And a resident in long-term care doesn't have a whole lot of stuff to think about. So they sit there and they worry about that. Wow, that person doesn't like me anymore, so now I'm going to get kicked out, and they're going to be mad at me, they're going to retaliate and not give me any care. They're just kind of a lost soul. And we get lots of complaints about that type of abuse that happens, and APS does as well. Many times there isn't anything you could do about it, as he said, she said, about stuff like that. But in long-term care, in a facility, a resident is more or less in public. So somebody will usually see that kind of thing going on, and they'll corroborate that kind of a complaint. So that way, that helps them. One of the hardest complaints we get is from home health. And the reason is that we're usually dealing with a resident who's in their home all by themselves. Well, and the biggest complaint about that is that the caregiver doesn't come. Well, a little resident, very sick, who needs home health care, sitting in their home and expecting that knock on the door or the bell to ring at a certain time, will go and answer it if somebody rings the bell at that time, and it might not be that person. So when we follow up on those, we undoubtedly receive word from the agency that sends those caregivers out there. Well, they checked in and they said they were out there and this and that, and the resident says they didn't come. Sometimes the resident can be mistaken. Sometimes as we age, and hey, I'm right there at the age limit, that we forget stuff. that stuff gets mixed up. So was that Thursday that happened, or was that Tuesday? Type of thing happens to a resident too, when one day isn't quite pretty much like the other. So we're talking, this one said and that one said, we have to kind of take it back to the office and churn it around in our heads and decide, what are we going to do about this? Let's all work together and get it ironed out. Usually ending up with the caregiver going out, talking to the resident, apologizing if they made them unhappy or miserable or whatever. Anyway, that's sort of an overview of the Ombudsman program. If anybody has a question, I do have some information about the Ombudsman program and my card. So all of you are very mobile, very youthful looking, shall I say, and you do not need long-term care. However, you might know somebody. You might want to know something about this one of these days. Please take some of the information. I'll leave it here when I go, so you're free to take it. Thanks so much for letting me be here. If there are any questions.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there any kind of a meaningful estimate that you could give us as to how many cases a week, let's say, that you have to deal with?
For me, it usually runs about 6, and you don't complete a case real fast like Perry Mason or whatever, because they take a while.
Sure.
You receive the complaint usually by telephone or on my email. But for the most part, it's on the phone. You immediately call that person back. And because I am part-time, 30 hours a week, sometimes those calls come in when I'm not there. Many times I am out in another facility, or I am out talking to the Rotary, whatever. But anyway, so I receive them on my answering machine. So when I go back to my office, that's the first thing I do, is to listen to my answering machine and call the folks that talk to me. Sometimes it is a resident calling, and those are the ones you jump on immediately. Sometimes their voice is very difficult to understand, and I listen to it 2 or 3 times, try to get a number to go with it, a telephone number, and then make an appointment with that resident to go out there immediately. When I deal with a resident over a complaint of any kind or any kind of an issue, I like to eyeball that resident. This is the person that I'm talking about. When I go to the administrator, when I go to the director of nursing or whoever I need to talk to, if I go to the family, this is the person. This is the way they looked when I saw them. This is what they said to me. That's very, very important. Can I help you at all? Did you know now that I do about 6? You're very welcome to help me with doing it. Anybody else have any questions?
Any other questions?
Thanks so much for letting me.
Here we have a certificate for you to visit today, and we donate in your name a library book to the James City County Children's Library, and we will fill that out and your name that you donated this to. Lullaby for a Little One.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Okay.
Right here?
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to take 2. Okay, say cheers. Thank you too.